Yo, what up, people? This your boy Tim, aka T.O. Speaks.
And it's your girl, Yami, aka Yams B. San, and you are now tuned into Love and Theology.
I know I've questioned many things in this world, but I never had to question your love. So I know one thing's for sure. I can put trust in a real love, your love. Yeah.
For every mom who ever missed a meal so they would have enough to let their babies eat. Fathers who grind every day to provide more than good advice.
Now, folks, we were kind of, on our last episode, we were debating on whether or not we should have the conversation that we're going to have with you now, but we were ill-equipped with information. Like, wouldn't you agree? Like, and even now, I feel like we're still kind of scrambling to get full-on details on this subject, and the subject being about the Haitians at the Texas border.
Correct. Yep, I agree with you.
So, but we didn't want to not stand in solidarity with the Haitian migrants, or like brush it off as if it's not, an important issue to talk about. Here at Love and Theology, I think we want to make it as comical and fun as possible, but we also need to deal with the truth of, like, a foundational principle for our theology is that we got to be mindful of people who are in destitute situations, people who are not in the best of circumstances, and we have to treat them with love.
I agree. I believe one thing that we're not going to do on this podcast is shy away from current events, right?
Right.
I believe those one of the things, going back to theology, that we often miss when we begin to talk about Jesus. Even a lot of preachers miss the mark on this. In my opinion, is we don't deal with current events, right? I believe one of Jesus' greatest missions was dealing with things that was going on in society, what he saw going on with what the Romans was doing to the Jews in that time, and he was dealing with those issues, So I believe that in order to be somebody who is what we call it, building the kingdom, helping build the kingdom of heaven, we have to actually deal with those issues and deal with it in an honest way.
Yeah. And there's a verse that I'm sure I'll find after we finish talking that talks about how we need to be mindful for the widows and the lame and the people who, but the weak, the perceived weaker people, which is why we want to talk about this topic today. So today's episode is going to be titled Haiti on Our Minds, right? And the reason why is because if you've been following the news, you've heard about the Haitian migrants that have been being turned away. So basically what's happening is that there were almost like maybe 15,000, and I'm reading this from the AP News, migrants who had gathered just days ago under the bridge under the Del Rio in Texas, and like the border of Acuña, Mexico. And basically we're coming to that area in hopes of like refuge. I think they came from not Del Rio. Where did they come from? Do you remember? And we can.
Yeah, all of them were from Haiti. I think there was a Del Rio.
Yeah, they weren't, but they weren't coming from Haiti. Yeah. They were like, they were not coming from Haiti. Where were they coming from?
Some came from Chile.
Yeah. Okay.
Some came from Chile, now passing through Houston.
Yeah, so they weren't coming from Haiti, and right. They probably haven't lived in Haiti for a number of years because of the devastation that Haitians have experienced over a sequence of time, right? And they, basically came to the border hoping to get a fair assessment or trial of whether or not they could be they would be able to live in the United States.
Right.
And they've been like kind of bamboozled, tricked, and left destitute, and then and shipped back to Haiti.
Right.
That's already experiencing devastation, and because of the earthquake, and then the killing of their president.
Right.
What were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say, yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. And I think that's the disheartening thing about living in America and seeing this stuff happen to people that look like us, right? These people are coming here to America just to find a better way of living, right? We're supposed to be the home of the free, land of the brave, or whatever.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like that, right? Every time somebody comes into this country, people have problems with them coming and saying they're immigrants and they don't belong here, and look what I had to do. To be honest, we all are immigrants to this country. This is a foreign country. We're all aliens to this country. So I think that should there be a way to allow them to enter? Yeah, they shouldn't just come and just walk in, of course, but they should have a fair shake at getting a chance to come here instead of being rounded up, sent back to Haiti, to a place where most of them not even from. They have no home there.
The other part of it too is not just them being deported. It's the way that they're being handled, right? So this week we saw images of cowboys on horses whipping Haitian people.
Whipping them. Yeah.
Like it's 2021 and we're currently experiencing the devastation of what we know to be a part of the culture, the American culture, or the systemic racist culture of America, slavery. Like if you compare two images and you put them both in black and white, you wouldn't be able to distinguish which was, the slavery times or 2021. And that's really like kind of appalling in anything. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Michael Jackson used to have a song that said that all I want to say is that they don't really care about us.
Right.
And I just after a year's worth of protests and, whatever, we're still experiencing, and you don't expect everybody to get it, right? But all 50 states were participatory in the protest for George Floyd and all of that was going on. So you would think that, they would get it. But America's instinct is to, do a thing and then default back to...
I believe even with the George Floyd protests, you're correct, all 50 states, you did see protests in every state, right? Black, white, everybody. It wasn't just a black people protesting.
Right.
However, the problem is, man, we always do stuff for the moment, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem. We do stuff for a moment. At some point, we got to get to the point where this thing bothers us every day in order to make a change. Cause I think the problem is, me personally, right, with us still doing racism, we allowing it as black people, right? Because take Kaepernick for example, right? Kaepernick took a knee because he was no longer a slave to money. He was no longer a slave to money. He no longer worried about what was going to happen because of his job, right? Until we get to a certain point where we're no longer worried about that and we're willing to take a stand, if we to lose everything, that's the only way as a people, as a whole, we're going to get through this. Are we going to keep on seeing this, right? Because we have so many people. I hear so many times people say, man, man, I got to feed my family, man. I got to do what I got to do. But if we don't stop doing what we got to do, our kids going to have to fight the same battle.
Yeah, and that's hard. I mean, that's hard to say because I'm among them that be like, if we didn't have Tabitha, it'd probably be a lot easier for me to be like, rah rah, shish boom ba.
Right.
But my perspective is completely I'm always battling between those two thoughts.
Right, and it's a true thing to worry about, but you got to think about it too. I understand what you're saying, but if we somewhere don't take a stance, Tabitha gonna have to fight the same battle after we gone, right? And she gonna have to teach her kids to fight the same battle.
Oh, you're right.
At some point, it got to stop.
I think one of the other things that I think bothers me about the history of how, because there's someone probably watching this and they'll be like, man, they have been told if they come to the border, they're gonna be turned away. That's the ruling or whatever. Granted, maybe 2 weeks ago before that, America was rallying behind trying to figure out a way to get the Afghans to come, to the United States.
Right.
Okay, whatever. But they need it, right? But I think what bothers me the most is that Haiti has been so instrumental into helping the United States do what the United States does, and the return. Like, for those of you who don't know, Haiti was the only successful slave result, revolt. So what happens is when the Haitians were enslaved, they took their freedom. They're the first Black republic, right? To take them from the French and
The British.
French and the Spanish. So what happened after that is once they got their freedom, they went around helping other countries get their freedom. So like the Dominican Republic, which has participated in ethnic purging of the Haitians, which means that they excommunicated. Basically, what happened on the Del Rio happened in the Dominican Republic. Haiti helped a lot of their people become be freed from slavery. Same thing for Jamaica, same thing for Venezuela, same thing for a variety of these islands and the United States.
I can say here on this land as well. Yeah.
Amanda Seals posted this post. I want to read to y'all 6 ways Haiti helped the United States, right? It says, during the late 1700s, Haiti was the richest colony in the world. We are the poorest one now, but we were once when I say we, Haitians, were once the richest colony in the world, making more money than the entire Spanish Empire, right? When the U.S. was battling against the English during their revolution, French made their wealth off of Haiti's $9 billion towards the United States in assistance. The money was instrumental in winning the war. Without Haitian money, there would have not been no U.S. independence. France used Haiti as a transient point to send military aid to the United States during its Revolutionary War in support of the American Patriot cause. The gunpowder used in the famous U.S. Battle of Saratoga came from Haiti. Haiti sent over 500 men of color to fight for the American Patriot cause in Savannah, Georgia, and you can actually see like images of Haitian people support in Savannah, including children as young as 12. One of these children was the future leader of Haiti, Henry Christophe. When the Haitian Revolution happened, Napoleon, losing the world's richest colony to former enslaved Africans, was desperate for money. With this loss and his desperation to fund his conquest in Europe, he sold a lot of acreages of land to America for money. The acres of the land make up what we now know as the states of Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, Colorado, South Dakota, Minnesota, Wyoming, North Dakota, and Montana. Without the Haitian Revolution, these areas would have stayed belonging to the United States of America, or would have stayed belonging to France. During the height of the American Civil War and the fight to keep slavery alive in the United States, Haiti offered free passage, land, and citizenship to African Americans who could make it to the ships leaving to Haiti in New Orleans. Here's the point. Without Haiti doing what it's done, America would not have the entire 50 states that they have, would not have the resources that they have. Black people owe Haiti so much.
Right.
And it feels like ever since the Haitians were able to gain their independence, they have been paying for it.
Yeah, they're still paying today, right?
I mean, no, the money, no. The money, I think they ended that somewhere around the 80s or the early 90s. But the point is, we paid for our freedom. Mm-hmm. And the reason why, because I remember I was talking to like an uncle figure about it. It was like, why would, after getting their freedom, would they go back and pay people for that? And the reason why is because the people who wanted to keep slavery alive were rallying together to come against them. And I mean, I'm sure they had already received so much carnage and whatever, they couldn't keep going. My point, but essentially my whole point in reading that whole blurb is that the United States owes Haiti a lot.
Right.
And has never given Haiti the same respect as they've given Cubans, who also respect Haitians, or any other group of people.
Right.
We've always been bottom of the barrel line, and that has to stop.
And the crazy thing about it, even as a black person born and raised in America, we took on the same type of attitude towards Haitians or any foreigner. You know why? Because of the ignorance, right? We was told that Haitians, they do this and do that, and we took on the same ignorance by picking and saying crazy stuff. Because you know what? We hate it's funny how we hate the same thing that look just like us because it's different. And that what happened, right?
But that kills me, because you can't go to New Orleans and not see imagery of the Haitian culture. You can't go to Chicago, which was founded by Haitians, a Haitian, without honor, or you shouldn't be able to go without honoring the fact that it was established by a Haitian. Or you can't go to Savannah,
right.
You know what I'm saying, or even South Carolina to some degree.
It's funny, like it reminds me of the I don't know if you ever heard of the Bacon Rebellion, right? It was a rebellion where you had poor white people, upper class white people, or rich white people, right? So the poor white people felt like, man, we don't have nobody, because basically black people's on the same level as poor white people, right?
Yeah.
So what happened was during the Bacon Rebellion, white people pretty much got mad, like, we're not even over these black people.
Yeah.
So what they did, they began to put in middle class and also color, black and white. That's how black and white came into play during the Bacon Rebellion, right? The tags they put on us, right? So what happened is they began to say, that's a black person, that's a white person. The poor white person is still better than this black person, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing, I think, what happened with black Americans here in America, right? So when Haitians or Mexicans or Jamaicans or anybody else from another country began to come over there, we've been treated so badly, right? As second-class citizens, now we feel like we're better than those black people.
We're at least better than them.
Right? So we began to pick on them and treat them like they was less than.
Yeah.
To give us some type of feeling of what they call superior, being superior.
Yeah.
So it's funny how we take on the same attributes as the oppressor oftentimes.
Right. The same things that we don't like are the things that we take on as personality traits.
And that leads even to this. If there's a black person saying, oh man, I remember when I was at work, they used to talk about the Mexicans coming over here. I used to hear black people say, yeah, they shouldn't be coming over here. They don't let us go to no other country. It's just hard to hear a black person that knowing what we went through.
Yeah.
Sit here and talk about that towards another race of people, man, saying that they don't deserve to be here. Knowing that what we went through, like, what makes you feel like now that you've been put in such a place? Because to be honest with you, the slavery they just don't do slavery anymore. It still is in the amendment. It never got abolished, man. People don't understand that. You see what I'm saying? It never got abolished, man. They just don't do it. It just ain't right? They feel like it just wasn't right, so they had to let it go. But for you to feel like another person don't deserve to be free in this on this land,
or have access to the same amount of freedom that you have access to.
Man, I mean, and you look just like them. That's very problematic, man.
And even when we talk about like the Mexicans, right? How much of the United States was Mexico at one point, right?
Yeah.
Like, so they're not inhabiting land that didn't belong to them. They're inhabiting, they're wanting to come back to land that they were pushed off of.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's history repeating itself. Because what was it during the Trump administration? Was it the Mexicans also that were the children in cages and things like that,
seeking asylum?
Like we're doing the same thing. And one of the things that, because I keep hearing, where's Kamala at? You know what I'm saying? People like, man, here we are looking like clowns voting for or the Biden administration, or the other side of it, people like, see, that's why I didn't want to vote. That's why I didn't want to participate. That part we get. That I think is understandable. But what I do like is that people are calling these people to the carpet.
Right.
Auntie Maxine wasn't having it. You know what I'm saying? Right. We have people holding these same people who said, who are like towing the line for the sake of politics and not the sake of personhood or people, and challenging them to think humanely. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be structure behind this, right?
There should be structure, right? I agree with that.
I'm just saying that not allowing for people to bring them food or resources or toiletry. We have hygiene issues. We got women who are in their menstrual cycles who can't get clean. Like that shouldn't be happening on American soil. That shouldn't be happening close to American soil.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And we should be advocates for making sure that doesn't happen.
Right. I agree with you 100%.
This is a little heavier than we normally we like to be joking and stuff like that, and we'll go back to it, but I think we would be so remiss if we didn't address how we are handling God's people.
Yep.
Ultimately speaking.
Yeah.
And that's not okay. I'm not okay with it.
And that's the problem. I think on every issue, and especially this issue, because this is the current issue, we have to, as Black people, white people, everybody who claim to love God, got to stop seeing God the way that they want to see them. You know, the sad thing about Jesus, I believe, how people see him is they begin to paint the picture of Jesus that they want, right?
Yeah.
Not the Jesus that the Bible and history tells us about, right?
A refugee.
Exactly. That's
right?
the Jesus that they tell us about, man. I remember reading a book. They say Jesus, when he was around a certain age, he was walking back from somewhere. He began to see people heads on spikes, right? People that looked just like him, Jewish people. And they say that at that point is when it really began for Jesus. Like, I got to do something about this.
Yeah.
Right? But we don't tell that story, right?
Yeah.
We don't tell that story. That's the story about Jesus, right?
Yeah.
But that was Jesus. Even when you look at how the Gospels were set up, right? Every gospel tells a story, but particularly in Mark, he's telling a story about hurt, pain, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? About what was going on, how Jesus saw hurt and pain. That's Mark's story where you begin to read the flow of the passage of the book. You see what I'm saying? Mark talked about the Maccabean revolt, right? He talked about all that when they was trying to take back when I forget the ruler name, but he made them begin to come into a Hellenistic world. You know what I mean?
What does that mean, though?
Hellenistic world. Basically, they take on the Greek way of life.
Yeah, okay.
They took on the Greek way of life, right? So they came into that world, and then you had Judas Maccabee, who began to revolt because they didn't want to worship their idols and do the things that the Jewish did that they considered to be paganistic, right? So that's what Jesus did. He fought against all that type of stuff that was wrong, that was done to the least of the people, man.
The least of them.
The least of them.
So I mean, and that's something to take away from when you think about, your Jesus. Think of him as a Haitian migrant, because he was a refugee.
He was a refugee. Yeah, he was.
And people didn't want him to live either. So what was the little thing that we used to wear on our little wrist? What would Jesus do?
I don't believe he'll be quiet.
He wouldn't be quiet.
I don't believe he'd be like, man, I just got to feed my family.
Yeah.
He'd be like, I got to put an end to this, man. Some kind of way.
So at the end of this episode, we're just going to list some resources, some places that you guys can go ahead and consider making donations to areas that are serving the people both in Haiti after the devastation that they've experienced, and also on the border. And if I don't know if you have any more questions, go ahead and reach out to us. We don't have all the answers. We don't know a lot. We just, we're just kind of people that want to talk about it or bring attention to it or bring awareness to it, and in hopes that there will eventually be a true resolve.
That's right.
So that's it. We'll return back to our happier, fun episodes after this one. But we do hope that you, at the bare minimum, learned something, and that this was also helpful as far as perspective. Also, if you have some comment and feedback and, some pushback.
Yep. And one thing I want to say we can leave is protest is not popular. We can't make it popular anymore, right?
Yeah.
We have to make it the dire need to protest for change. And that's it. I think that's the problem, man. We have made protest and fighting for a cause popular. It's a thing to do.
It's the cool thing. That's what the cool kids are doing.
And that's why it's short-lived. And I believe the people who's oppressing us or who's causing this stuff know it's short-lived. They understand. They just gonna protest for a little while, then they go back to,
business as usual.
Business as usual. So that's it.
Okay.
Peace.
Bye.
Thank you for joining.
Oh boy.
I know I've questioned many things in this world, but I never had to question your love. So I know one thing's for sure. I can put trust in a real love, your love. Yeah.
For every mom who ever missed a meal so they would have enough to let their babies eat. Fathers who grind every day to provide more than good advice. Charlie Sheen, take it, everything you gotta take to bring the bacon home and put it on the table. You are not forgotten, legacies are made in our darkest hours. God is watching, keep your faith. Don't bend, don't fold, there's a lyric I quote. Tell me trouble don't last always. There's a Christ I know who revives the soul of the one who lose their way. Pursue the one who promised us a peace of mind. I tried to fly high on my choice of vice, but then I found Christ was the road to life.